in life. Mine was, I started drawing very early in life because my first influence, I would say, was my mother. As a kid, I didn't have coloring books. So my mother was the person who drew, and then after that she taught me to color in like her drawings, and from there sometimes after a while of coloring in, then naturally like sometimes they don't have time to draw more, so obviously my mom was just like, never mind, you learn lah. Then you start copying the drawings, right? So that was how I started drawing from the very beginning. So then comics for me was something that I picked up, I would say later on in life, at secondary school. I mean, I've been reading comics all this while, but I didn't draw them. And at the time, I wanted to draw comics, but there wasn't a lot of sources. Like the internet wasn't really that developed at that time, so we didn't really have a lot of resources to go to find tutorials and all that. So I really, it wasn't until like somewhere along middle of secondary school that I kind of found my footing in terms of reference of comics and joining clubs and talking to people and learning from like visual reference material, because the teachers who taught me how to do landscapes and all that, they didn't really understand where I told them like, I want to draw comics, but they don't really know how to teach you how to draw comics. So yeah, I learned the hard way in that sense. If you think about it, the most famous characters are all basically made out of basic shapes. Doraemon is mostly made out of circles, right? Even Mickey Mouse is just 3 circles, and it's so iconic. So yeah, anyway, yeah, that's my influence at the start. And for how my style looks like now, it was when my friend introduced me to Craig Thompson's work, which is an autobiographical artist. He created like Blankets, which is like his autobio story about his first love, and like it's really thick. And that's when I read through it, I felt that, oh, this is something I could do as well. It's like something just clicked inside me, and it's like, because all this while before that I tended to mimic other people's style, and not to say that I didn't try to mimic his style, but that was the style that just the storytelling and the artwork just came together for me, and something just clicked inside, and that's I knew that was the kind of stories I wanted to tell. When I first started, like most people, comic artists will tell you that those that like self-reflection tend to do a lot of journals, or you write diaries, right? So comic artists tend to do the autobiographical route at the start sometimes. So you just add pictures to your thoughts, and they don't necessarily have to be, the image does not have to necessarily exactly match the words that are written. Sometimes it's parallel storytelling, right? So from my side, I just tend to try and read more widely, and in terms of stuff I like to read, I think it borders between young adult and also some other whatever's like my friends recommend me. Now I'm trying to get much into high fantasy and stuff like that. I like adventure stories.
Adventures.
Yeah. Some of the successful cartoonists that I know of also, who get opportunities to like publish their work by actual comics publishers, right? They don't necessarily like work within the comics industry as well, right? So most of us get our work out. There's the internet nowadays also. So as long as you produce good work, you share it online. Of course, you need to get the right people to see it. But if you have the genuine interest and you mingle at events, or sometimes it's not so much about being desperate to push your work. It's just more of like, if you're genuinely interested in the industry itself and you just part in events, network. I mean, I don't like to use the word network, but it's more of like, you get to know people, and and if you're genuinely interested in other people's work, they tend to reciprocate that sort of interest, most of the time. For me, I self-publish at the start, you see. So I just draw something that I feel strongly about, put it in a book, and then I go to events, booth there, and then sell my work. And then some people, if they like it, then they'll pass it on, and sometimes give me name cards. So from there, you tend to open opportunities for yourself, and then also, and if you engage with other people, even if you're not boothing at an event, you get to know them, and then you sometimes just interact with them online, and maybe sometimes when you get to know them, they might even like share opportunities with you. So for me, sometimes like I'm part of the unnamed group on Facebook, and we are like trying to create this Southeast Asian community of artists, and comic artists in particular, because we know that comic artists in this part of the world is like already is challenging for arts, right? So when you do a subdivision of arts, it's even more challenging. And it's more difficult to be taken seriously because I think we don't have the critical mass of creators and readers and support. So the Trinity isn't there already. So I feel that apart from Malaysia, we might as well use an online platform to try and rise up together as for all the nations in this area, because most of the big publishers are either from France, UK, even Hong Kong has a stronger comics base than we do. So so for that, I think if you want to create opportunities for yourself, you have to think about how to bring up the whole community as a whole as well. So that's how I look at it most of the time. I think being an artist in general, I think for me personally, I tend to, I've been told that I'm naturally curious. I think maybe it links to why I'm a scientist as well. But I just tend to want to know what or how this thing came to be or how it happened, right? So as an artist, I think if you are curious about your craft, like you want to tell a better story, you want to draw well, you find ways to learn, right? So I think most of us, regardless whether you're a comic artist or a dancer or anything, I think if you have the curiosity or the will to learn more about your craft, I think that's what usually gets you further than the rest, I think, in that sense. And also another thing I think that personally I feel that from my observations is that to become a good artist, you shouldn't box yourself in. And not just in terms of what you create, but in terms of your influences. Because I know that as a start, I also felt I fell into that box as well. That we tend to want to I want to be a comic artist, so I only read all the comics that I know of just to understand it so much better. And then it just becomes our comics will just be about comics. You don't know what's happening in the wider world. So if you want to draw political comics, you have to read up on politics, right? So I think it's good to have influences from other aspects that you can channel into your own work, regardless of what medium it is you're creating in. For me, inspiration comes from my own personal experience most of the time. That's why I like to draw autobio comics. My family members sometimes, or things I find hilarious in real life, some things that happen to me, so I tend to like to record them in comics form. I think it's hard to answer that question because I wouldn't know how I would have been like without drawing, but I know that drawing or being a cartoonist, or at least creating work in this medium, has made me more self-reflective. I tend to notice or at least I tend to like to pay attention to things that are in the background usually people don't really look at. And that's what I think being an artist has made me pay attention to more details that, otherwise when you draw, you tend to, even if you do live drawing, you have to pay attention. So as an artist, I think that's a very important skill to have. Whether you are in the art stream or the science stream or whatever box people want to put you in, if you want to draw or if you want to create, just create and just try and silence your inner voice, because I think the harshest critic in everyone is really your inner critic. And if you don't silence your inner critic, you will not be able to stand out to external criticism as well. And I think it does a disservice to yourself and the world in general, because sometimes even if you do not create and you do not have that product in the world, right, even if you dislike it, right, it doesn't exist for other people to like it as well. So sometimes you just need to get over that hurdle and then see where things work out from there.
Brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
So much.
Thank you so much.